Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ingrid van der Merwe, and I'm Head of Careers Advisory at the UCT Careers Service. Welcome to this second in our Careers Conversations series. It's called My Environmental Career. We have three guests today. One of our guests is still joining us as virtual life would have it. There have been a few technical problems, but that's not a problem because two of our guests are already here. So just to give you the just how this is going to work, this is a conversation. I'll introduce the guests in a minute, and we just want to ask you also to put your questions in the comments section, and we will try and answer as many of them as possible. So I'm going to ask a few set questions to the panelists, and then afterwards we will take all the student questions after about half an hour. So without further ado, I'd like to first of all welcome Mathabo, who's a marine consultant at Malange Tech, and we're very glad to have you, Mathabo. And Mathabo has a BSc Honours in Ocean and Atmosphere Science. And then Rebekah. Rebekah has an Emphill in Environmental Law from UCT, has done other courses, which I'm sure she'll mention. And she's an engagement and target analyst at the World Wildlife Fund. Her title is actually a lot longer than that, but I'll get her to say that as well. And then we will hopefully be joined by Fortunate, who is an assistant professional officer or research scientist for the City of Cape Town. And when Fortunate comes online, we will just loop her in when it's appropriate. So my first question, and we'll start with Mathabo. If you could just give us a bit of an idea of your career journey, what you studied, and how you got into the job you're doing today. Over to you.
Hi everyone. So I started my journey at UCT in 2013, where I studied my undergrad in environmental science and oceanography. I then continued to do my honours in ocean and atmosphere science. And during that year, I did an internship with Malange Technologies. They were providing research projects to the honours students in the oceanography department. And whilst doing your honours, you were able to work with them for 6 months through an internship. And that's how I got introduced into Malange. After that, working in the consulting side, it encouraged me to do my master's in applied ocean sciences. It is a taught master's. And I went through the operational oceanography stream. And after that, I decided that I would like to continue working within the consulting field and decided to join Malange as a marine consultant in 2018.
Thanks so much, Nabato. That's great. And apologies, because I had left out that one qualification. So, but glad you added it. So Rebekah, could you give us how you sort of got into the working world and what you studied?
Thank you so much, Ingrid, and hello everyone. I have a similar background to Mathabo. I also studied undergraduate in environmental science and ocean and atmospheric science at UCT, and I then specialized in atmospheric science in my honours year. From there, I decided I wanted to branch out and diversify a little bit. So I studied a master's or Emphill in environmental law, also at UCT, but situated in the law department, which is also a one-year taught master's with a dissertation component. And there I did my dissertation on carbon tax and got interested in the climate change field. I did a short internship at the City of Cape Town and at the ENCA Weather Service during my studies. And then I got involved in the graduate program or internship at WWF, working within the initiative that I do now, the Science-Based Targets Initiative. And from there, I progressed in different roles to where I am now as an engagement and target analyst.
Sure, thanks so much. Before I go on to the next questions, it's actually great that you guys are relatively recent graduates, because I think the audience would really love to know, how you've said about how you got an internship or you got into this program. So maybe Rebekah, if I can start with you, I mean, what was that application process like? How did you actually get into the World Wildlife Fund and also into into the City of Cape Town?
Thank you, Ingrid. So for the City of Cape Town and the Worldwide Fund for Nature internship, both of them were advertised online that I found through research portals, and it had quite a substantive interview process. But they were all looking for fresh graduates, which was a great plus coming out of university, that no work experience was required. So started off at the city, but then my interest area and a position opened up within the WWF's internship program, so decided to pursue that route.
Thanks, Mathabo. How did your application process go?
So with Lwandle advertised to internship posts specifically to the UCT Oceanography department. So they have a close working relationship with the Oceanography department. And so they were running a program, I think it was the second year when I joined. So I think it ran for 3 years, and where they were taking 2 honors students from the department, and they would provide research projects, honors research projects, where they would provide supervisors as well, and then also do a 6-month internship with them.
Okay, staying with you, Mathabo, I wonder if you could tell us, a job title doesn't tell us everything, and it would be really nice to know a little bit more about Lwandle, and also what it is exactly you can do. And I know that has to do with, I know when we were trying to secure you as a speaker, we had to dodge between times when you were at sea. So please tell us more. What does your job entail, and tell us more about the organization?
So I'll start with the organization. Lwandle Technologies is a marine environmental consulting company. We're based in Cape Town, and we specialize in physical oceanographic measurements. We do water and sediment quality monitoring and assessment. We also do marine ecology surveys, and we also do specialist studies, which form components part of environmental impact assessments, compliance studies, as well as policy studies. And so my role as a marine consultant is when we get projects based on our experience and based on our interest, we get assigned a project and you become a project manager for that. You plan that, so that means planning the project, doing the research, and producing a report on that project. And so various skills such as data processing. If the project has a fieldwork component, that means you have to go collect the data, you have to process the data and present the data so that you can see it in the report. So yeah, and other skills include, mapping on QGIS, software such as QGIS, various skills go into it. Yeah, that's quite it.
Thank you. I'll ask you to elaborate a little bit more on the skills after this, but just one last before we move to Rebekah. Is most of your work, is it office-based? I mean, I know we're going to talk about how COVID, but I mean, is it a lot of time in front of the computer? Is it in the field a lot? What sort of percentage is writing reports and doing those sorts of things and being in the field?
So it really just depends on the type of projects we get. I think 50-50 goes into either desktop studies, which are studies that are just based on existing information, and then there are projects that involve field work that require us to go out to the field and collect our own data. But yeah, it's basically 50-50.
Thank you. Rebekah, can you elaborate a bit more on that very long job title and tell us a bit more? And you also need to unmute. Great.
Apologies, my internet dropped for a split second, but understanding that we're speaking about our organization and our role.
That's right. Yeah,
okay.
That's right. And I also you probably missed the comment I made about your very long job title. So if you could tell us more, in fact, you can give it to us. It's a very interesting one.
Sure. Thanks, Ingrid. So To start off with my role, or my very long, complicated title, I'm an engagement and target analyst in the Science-Based Targets Initiative at WWF. So I work on the interface of two organizations, the first one being the Worldwide Fund for Nature, based at the Cape Town office, and we deal with the interface of natural systems as well as people, so working across different natural systems and how they interact with communities and the broader societal impacts, so anything from water to land to marine to climate. And then specifically, my work focuses on the Science-Based Targets Initiative, of which WWF is one of the partners, but we also work with 3 other leading global NGOs, CDP, the World Resources Institute, and the United Nations Global Compact. And the work concentrates on corporate climate action, and we work with companies across the world to align their business with the climate safe future. And we specifically focus on companies setting targets on their greenhouse gas emissions that aligns with the thresholds that are required by climate science. So we can aim towards well below 2 degrees, but moving towards 1.5 degrees of warming. And specifically, my role focuses on the actual technical target validations that companies submit to us, and we function as a verification platform to understand if they meet best practice and our criteria. But I also work with companies globally as well as in South Africa and the African region to understand what they need to do to set targets. And then I'm also involved in technical work to understand what is needed for shipping, aviation, so airlines and logistics companies, to set targets that are termed ambitious. Wow.
Sure. I'm going to actually stick with you, Rebekah, and then Batu to also just think about this question. Both of you have mentioned a lot of skills, and I was wondering if you could just reflect on the skills you're using and maybe tell the audience which of the skills are ones that you developed through your studies, and which are some of the skills that, sometimes the softer skills that, or essential skills as we like to call them, you know, what are those other skills that you may not necessarily have expected when you were a student? So reflection on skills, starting with you, Rebekah.
Thank you, Ingrid. So starting with what I gleaned from my university career is the core understanding or the scientific knowledge that flows into my day-to-day work, but also the skills around writing and research and understanding how to break different parts of information into tangible packages that different audiences can understand and relate to. And more of the softer skills that I've learned on the job is the importance of communication, both in terms of writing and email exchanges, which is also very important for me because I work in a virtual team. Up until 3 months ago, I was the only person in the Southern Hemisphere. Most of my colleagues are US or European based. So understanding how to clearly communicate both on these virtual platforms and in writing, as well as with companies, how to persuade them to join our initiative and to align their business to where it needs to be. And then another core skill that I've learned on the job is relationship management. So understanding how to manage crisis situations, but also how to work with companies and shepherd them across the threshold for climate action.
Thanks so much, Rebekah. I just want to welcome Fortunate. I know it's very stressful when there are technical things and you're coming into a conversation that's already going. So Fortunate, I'm going to give you a moment or two to catch your breath. And I was asking Rebekah and Mathabo to just consider the skills that they use in their job, and then I'm going to cross to you and give you a proper welcome, and then ask you a little bit to tell us about your job and your role after Mathabo has spoken. So over to you, Mathabo.
Thanks, Ingrid. So yeah, similar to Rebekah, the skills that I acquired during my school year were mostly qualitative and quantitative research skills, writing skills through, writing your dissertation, and then programming. So we did a bit of MATLAB and Python, a bit of an introduction during our postgraduate years. But I think those skills that I really learned them when I was able to apply them into my day-to-day work with actual data that I've collected and see that data through. So at work, then the softer skills that I gained were more, again, like Rebekah said, communication skills, learning how to communicate with clients, budgeting with projects, seeing what really goes into, these type of marine environmental projects.
Thank you. So Fortunate, welcome. We're so glad you have joined us. Always adds nice rounded off to have 3 panelists. So we're very glad that we sorted that out. So just to start off with, if you could tell us, just very briefly what you studied and what your job is about, who you work for, and what your job entails.
Okay, so currently I'm working at the City of Cape Town as an assistant professional officer for research. I am situated within the air quality laboratory. And what I studied at UCT. My undergrad was environmental science and ocean and atmosphere. And then I went on to do my honors in atmospheric science. And then I did my master's in environmental and geographical science. I started working while I was doing my master's. I started in 2018, and I've been there since 2018 until today. So I started as an intern on a 3-year contract, but I got a permanent post before the contract expired. So now I'm currently employed as a permanent staff in the air quality lab, but also what we also do is sometimes you switch from your air quality lab or whatever lab that you're in, and you work on water quality laboratories. So I've worked on the analysis of different water bodies and also on air quality.
Great. So Fortunate, I'm just sort of fast forwarding a bit to sort of get you to answer the questions that the others have before you joined us. So could you just give us an idea of what is your role actually? What does it entail? What are your day-to-day activities, and what skills do you use in your job?
So with regards to the air quality laboratory, what we do is we have 14 monitoring sites within the City of Cape Town, and we try and make sure that the standard of the air quality is within the limits. And if there's ever a glitch and maybe there's a spike in the pollution, we have to investigate what could be the reason for that. And also we go into the research space where we try to introduce new ways and new pollutants as time goes by due to climate change. There's always something new, and then we try and figure out how best can we introduce that into our routine work as a lab.
And can you just say a bit more about, what sort of skills are you using in your job? And which of those did you learn in your course, and which did you have to actually take on when you started working?
Primarily, it's the modeling, the coding. So when I was still studying, I used R and Statistica, and now I'm still using that and other different models to kind of understand how the air quality behaves with the changes in season. So I mostly use R at work, and a model called Air Resource Management, which helps us analyze the data that comes in and also try and write reports because we have to submit monthly reports to our clients, and then we have to write monthly reports, and we analyze our data using those softwares. So it's primarily report writing and also climate modeling.
Thank you. My next question is about the situation we're in now, and I'm going to ask for Mathabo to answer first, then Rebekah, then Fortunate. So, I mean, Rebekah mentioned working with a remote team, but I'm just wondering if each of you could comment on how the COVID-19 lockdown and the situation we're in now, how has that affected your organization and the way you work? Mathabo?
So with the lockdown, a lot of our projects we had fieldwork components and like due for April, the period of April onwards, and so that had to be postponed. And any data we had collected prior to the lockdown, we would just write reports based on that data. Otherwise, other projects were more desktop studies, which is again based on existing information. So we were able to work from home and complete those reports and continue with work. So like, fortunately, we didn't get too affected by the lockdown. And then in level 4, when the regulations relaxed a bit, we were able to get permits to continue doing our field work and mostly water quality monitoring projects. And yeah, so far it's been okay.
Thanks. Rebekah?
Thank you, Ingrid. So from an individual perspective, all I really need for work is Wi-Fi and a laptop, and I've been able to continue with my day-to-day work responsibilities. But with a broader organization, because the WWF is an NGO, we rely on funding, and conservation income was cut during COVID, and all the natural protected areas were closed for people to visit. So it's had a ripple effect in terms of the continuation and I would say profitability of the NGO world. And then also broader, the focus has shifted to this health crisis, and the focus has shifted away from the climate change crisis. So as the Science-Based Targets Initiative, we've tried to keep the emphasis that we're working and living into crises, both on a health basis and on an environmental basis, showing that our work is still relevant.
Thanks, Rebekah. Fortunate?
For us, since the beginning of lockdown, what was put in place is a 50% capacity within the lab. So each lab had only 50% of the staff working, which was, and then it's been like that till even on the current level 2, and that creates some kind of a strain because now few people have to do the work because the work can't stop. We still have to make sure that the water that people are drinking is safe to drink and the air quality is also at its optimum level. So it's been challenging, but we somehow, as Rebekah has mentioned, that for some work you just need Wi-Fi and a laptop. It's the same as when it comes to air quality. I just need my Wi-Fi and my laptop, and I can analyze my data online. And if there's anything wrong within the system, I can arrange with someone to go to the site if maybe load shedding affects the site or any other problem that may occur that disrupts the data coming in. So then I would arrange to go to the site. But because we have different people assigned to different sites, it means now that when I'm on duty for this week, I have to manage my sites and someone else's sites. And then the following week, they manage their site and my site. So that kind of creates a strain on the entire team. But so far, we're managing just fine. Yeah.
I think what you're all saying is the adaptability that one has to show and the flexibility in work is something that I think has come to the fore for all of us. We've got some great student question coming in, but I've got one more question before we go to the student questions. So all three of you, unfortunately, I'm going to start with you and then Mathabo and Rebekah. What do you wish you had known when you were a student? Now with the knowledge of what you know with working, what did you wish you'd known?
Well, I think the primary thing is teamwork. That's one of the things that play a major role in the workplace as opposed to at school. Another thing is conflict management. There's always going to be some form of conflict, whether it's directly or indirectly on you, but it's always going to be there. So you need to find ways around dealing with that without necessarily, being emotional about whatever the situation may be. And that's something that obviously you don't get to learn at university. It's something that you just have to get as you go. But yeah, if I was taught how to manage that, I think that's one of the things that were very much crucial, even with while I was still an intern, because I remember I once responded to an email in the same manner that I received it. Like the person sent the email in a very angry manner and I responded in the same manner. So my manager then sat me down and told me that in a case like this, if you feel like you are somehow infuriated by how the person spoke to you, rather approach them personally and not put it on email, because an email can stand as evidence on what you said or did or didn't do. So that for me was one of the most vital things that I learned. And then I've tried to avoid, firstly, allowing my emotions to get into my work or taking it as if someone is attacking me personally and not the work that I'm doing. And also there is a lot of discrimination within the workspace. You need to, I think the one thing that I did not experience in varsity is that type of discrimination, where you're being a subordinate comes with, especially when you're a woman, you're a subordinate, you're a woman, there's a lot of abuse, subtle as it may be, but you, as a woman, you'll feel it. And it's kind of difficult to not feel like you just want to quit this job because you don't feel like you are seen for what you bring to the company than what you look like. So I think those are the things that are not in a textbook. They just come with experience and learning from others. And yeah, I think those are the things that I valued the most since I started working.
Sure, some really very valuable things that you're saying there, with email communication, but also those subtle things that one has to deal with. So thanks for that. Mathabo, what would you wish you had known as a student?
I wish I knew how broad this environmental field is. I mean, you have Rebekah, Fortunate, and I who studied the same thing in undergrad, and yet we went in almost kind of different directions. So I wish that I, explored all the options in the environmental science field, looked at what I could do, find my passion. I was lucky enough that where I ended up is my passion and I really do enjoy it. But I do wish that I was able to be introduced to these different fields within this broad field, and also knowing how interdisciplinary they are. The skills, Fortunate is more in the atmospheric science side of it, and I'm more on the oceanography side, but the work that we do kind of links and forms the skills that we share, like a certain group of skills. And I wish that I knew that, even in the workplace, you need to be open-minded and keep learning and keep improving your skills. That when you graduate, that's not when your learning stops. You still keep learning as you go and at work. So, yeah.
Thank you. Over to you, Rebekah.
Thank you, and I completely agree with what my two fellow panelists have said. Maybe just to add on, I also wish that I just fully enjoyed and immersed myself more within my university career, as I was always very focused on forward-looking and future career, but just to fully appreciate the season that you're in your life and the different opportunities and knowledge sharing and growing that you have available at your university. And then also just to expand that there is such, I would say, emphasis on having different transferable skills. So in my undergraduate, I wish I branched out more. I was always very interested in the different sciences, but I didn't want to branch out into maybe taking more humanities courses or other skills I could learn. So definitely think about how you can equip yourself as a personal brand, whether you want to take economics courses. The modeling skills are always highly valued, or just different courses that broaden the way that you think and how you would apply knowledge and learn.
Thank you. I think that it's great that you've all touched on slightly different things, because I think you know, you're just bringing out the value of the lessons that you've learned through your working experience, but just the involvement in other activities as being a student. I'm sure that students could gain some of those skills and transfer them to work. Anyway, I'm now going to go to the questions. We have two quite similar questions about work experience. So just to the panelists, because we're not, they're not directed to anyone specific, so maybe just give me a wave on the screen if you want to answer this. So the first question is, how valued is a postgraduate qualification while having no work or internship experience? And how does one navigate this when entering into the work environment? Would anybody like to answer that? Rebekah?
Great. Thank you, Ingrid. Maybe just to start off with my personal story, with the WWF internship, the entrance requirements are quite high. They look for master's students. So having a base qualification of a master's level is important, especially within the science field, because you're viewed as technically apt. So definitely important, and there are a lot more internships available now within the science field that don't need work experience, which is really great, and the industry keeps on evolving, and because of the industry working and the different threats of climate change and other environmental threats, different jobs are created every day that in 5 years from now will probably be in a job that hasn't even existed today. So it's a very dynamic space to be in.
Can I move on? This is a slightly different question. Upon entering the job market, how vital was the job experience that you gained prior to getting your job? So the things that you did before you were working full-time, how, this is a different question from a different person. So working part-time as a student, how important was that in your jobs? Fortunate?
I think in my experience, because I started working while I was studying, it was very much challenging. It required a lot of time management, and when I was employed as an intern, I was employed for climate modeling. I had absolutely no idea about pollutants and how they disperse and how they are transported, and I had to somehow learn on the job, which was obviously a different space altogether from what I studied at my university level. So that was working and studying for me was a bit of a big challenge. It actually led to me doing my master's for an extra year, because I just couldn't find the time to write and also be fully involved in my work. So learning on the job was a challenge, and time while studying was also a bit of a challenge for me.
Okay. Thank you. I'm actually going to move, Mathabo, if you could keep that short, because the questions are pouring in and there are lots of them. So do you want to just add something to that, and then we'll go to the next question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think, again, it's important that you work on your skills, because if you have the skills, you can really apply them to any job, even if you haven't been in that field before. Applying your research skills, your either technical skills, if you can perfect those, I think you'll be able to work in any field within this environmental sector.
Great, thanks. Okay, this is for everyone. 2 linked questions. Are there specific internships or part-time works you could suggest? And do you all think you were lucky to get your jobs because there were tons of jobs out there, or do you think you were just lucky? Rebekah?
Thank you, Ingrid. So I can really recommend the City of Cape Town as well as WWF's internship programs, because it takes a range of different students from a range of different backgrounds with different applicabilities in government or consultancy or NGOs for WWF, and then within City of Cape Town, there's a lot of possibilities to be in different departments with different work streams and interests. So do recommend those, and they are on average about a year, so you have substantial time to learn, to network, to build relationships, and to really entrench your knowledge within the working world, plus then having a year work experience. I definitely think once you have your foot in the door at an organization and they see your work ethic and the quality of your work, it's helpful then to progress through the organization and develop your role and be promoted. So definitely think it's based on hard work with a bit of luck.
Okay, it seems to me that we might have lost Mathabo, so we'll hopefully she'll join again. But there's a question here that I think might be too fortunate. But it says, do any of you think that using R as your primary coding language may make collaboration in the field difficult, and that Python may be more useful? Rebekah, or fortunate? Fortunate. Great.
I will respond to that. So in my current workplace, we don't use Python, and R, we're using it because I introduced it along with another girl who was an intern at the time from UCT. So we brought in that skill of using R for data management. And I am not well equipped to answer if Python is better. But if I look at applications, even for like if you want to do your postgrad or abroad, Python is also put there as a special requirement, just as other data management models. So do not just focus on one and just broaden your skills as much as you can. R and Python, to my knowledge, are almost similar to an extent. So if you can learn R, if you can learn Python, if you can learn MATLAB, I suggest that you equip yourself with all that, because one way or another, they will come in handy. It will just depend on what problem are you faced with, what research are you doing, and how does that model accommodate for that type of research. So I would say that instead of focusing on one type of modeling technique, just try and familiarize yourself with at least 2-3 of them. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm going to go on to another question. This is, I think, for Rebekah. For postgraduate students, how important is having been awarded funding on your CV for the kind of jobs as most of the income is from funding? And then also asking, do your team that you work with all have an environmental background, or are they multidisciplinary?
Great question. So on the first instance, it isn't viewed as a plus or minus. More what would be a value-added skill is if you have experience in funding proposals and acquiring funding and engaging with funders, more than having gotten funding during your university career. On the second question, my colleagues are from diverse backgrounds and different work streams. Specifically within my team, there's quite a few colleagues with engineering backgrounds, as well as pure science, but across WWF, there's a wide range. Lawyers that wanted a career change to pure scientists, to consultants, to writers. So a broad range of underlying skills and knowledge areas.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to join two questions together here. Someone has asked, are there sort of winter internships that in the environmental sector that you could suggest? And someone else has asked, is international experience important to getting a job? Either of you. We're still waiting for Mathabo to come back. Either of you like to comment on that? International experience or suggestions of winter internships or summer internships? Rebekah, and then Fortunate.
Great. So as far as I'm aware, the WWF internship is open for applications, but I think that starts beginning of next year. I'm not too sure of specific internships that are happening as of now. In terms of the international aspect, it is a value-added skill if you have experience of working in an international team, but more than that, it's about working across different cultures and different backgrounds, that you're seen as a team player and you can navigate different value systems and different cultural backgrounds, more than having worked in an overseas environment. It's how you interact with people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Fortunate, do you have something to add?
In terms of the international experience, for me, it did come in handy. It did kind of make my CV separate from the rest. So what I was once part of a exchange program between UCT and the University of Tübingen in Germany, and that experience on its own, it was not even part of my skill sets as an atmospheric scientist. It was just an exposure on how the countries differ and how the economic standards are different. So it wasn't even about my career, but it still did make my CV stand out more than other people. So I think it does play a role. It also depends on what you are going into or what were you doing when you were there. And in terms of internships or winter school, I don't know about those where I'm currently working. Usually they have what they call in-service training, where students I've only seen students from CPUT who come in for like a couple of months to work on it's like a research program of some sort. So that's the only one I know. As far as I know, with my workplace, there is a program called ISDG. It is a very lucrative program, and I would suggest that most people familiarize themselves with it, especially if you want to stay in the science stream, because what it does is it helps you get registered as a professional. Like, that's the aim of it. You get 3 years experience, then you end up registering. And also, if you are a city buzzer, once you're done with your studies, you have to do in service the number of years that you were funded. But as far as those short 1 month, 2 months, or a few hours work, I don't think they have it, or I'm not aware of, rather.
Okay, I'm going to move on. Just a heads up to the audience. There are a very large number of questions coming in, so we may not get through them all, but we will try. Okay, first of all, to just maybe if you guys could just mention one. Someone has asked, what is the one soft skill that you think makes you very valuable and employable? Fortunate?
As I mentioned before, teamwork and conflict management are two things that I have found to be very valuable in the workspace. It goes outside of your technical knowledge. It's how you carry yourself in the workspace that also is very much important.
Okay, Rebekah, do you want to add one?
Sure, happy to. From my side, I would say being a clear communicator, both written and verbal, is a key skill within this arena.
Okay, great. Staying with skills, there's a question that says, if you require new technical skills on the jobs, do companies tend to give space to learn these skills? And is there a lot of pressure to master them quickly? Okay, Rebekah, and then Fortunate.
Thank you, Ingrid. So within my space, they do look at what underlying technical skills or more knowledge arena you have. So within my specific role, having a knowledge base around greenhouse gas accounting and how companies account for corporate emissions is vital. But I've learned that on the job. And they do give a space for onboarding or bringing yourself up to speed in terms of technicalities. But there is, I would say, level pressure, but an expectation that you do learn quite quickly. But whatever you do, you're involved in a team, and even if you do individual tasks, you're always based in a team that you have opportunities to ask questions, and it's very collaborative. So there is space to learn, and of course, space to make mistakes and learn from them as well.
Fortunate?
With scientific services, that's the lab that I work at City of Cape Town. The ISDG program that I mentioned allows for you to actually request to learn something new. And you do not even need to motivate. You just need to do your research. Like if you know of a private company or even within the City of Cape Town that offers that type of skill. If you want to learn GIS and you know that there's offices somewhere within Cape Town that use GIS, and you can just request for that and it will be made available. And also because we also do research, obviously we work with people from different fields. I've been involved in projects that had to do with groundwater, and as an atmospheric scientist, I had to find ways around learning what entails the whole groundwater field. And I used that opportunity with ISDG to get the skills required. And we do have an annual, it's more like a request for skills that you want to learn, whether it's soft skills or technical skills. You just put them in a form, from the most important to the least important, and then they try by all means to make sure that within that financial year you get the training for those skills that you want.
Thank you. Okay, we have 10 minutes left and still a lot of questions. So I think the best way to manage this is for panelists to keep answers quite short. Welcome back, Mathabo. It's nice to have you back. Sorry about that little dip you had. There are two questions specifically for you. One is, what does water quality monitoring entail? And another for you is, sorry, just came in later. Sorry, I've lost it now. Maybe answer that first, and then I'll come back to the. Oh yes, sorry, I've got it here. As an oceanography graduate, how would you recommend we diversify our portfolios to be more attractive to the environmental sector?
So regarding the first question about what goes into water quality monitoring, so specifically, if I can give an example of a project that we're busy on now, we are busy monitoring the 3 marine outfalls at Camps Bay, Half Bay, and Green Point. So every week, for 6 weeks, we go out and we use an instrument called the CTD, which measures temperature, salinity, chlorophyll, turbidity throughout the water column. We also take water samples where we collect samples for fecal indicator bacteria, suspended solids, and so we use these measurements to determine whether these variables have they exceeded the limit for what is required in the area, and is it safe for, because they're quite close to beaches, is it safe for people to be swimming on the beaches with these variables? And so yeah, basically we then present this data and give it to our clients, who then decide whether what should be done in order to make the water more safe for the natural environment, and also whether this will impact the marine ecology in the region as well. Yeah.
Great. This one is for Rebekah. Rebekah, why did you choose an Employable in environmental law, and are you happy with the decision, and has it opened doors?
Great question. So I definitely wanted to diversify out of pure science. I wanted to move more into working with companies and different stakeholders more than a purely modeling day-to-day. So I decided to upskill and diversify with the Infill environmental law. Very happy I did it. It was my favorite year at university. There was a very eclectic group of colleagues that I did my degree with from across the world, and really great lectures that ignited a fresh passion of climate change and climate action. So very happy, and it's put me in good stead because it's changed the way that I think. And also for certain projects, I'm seen as, I suppose, a plus in terms of the skill, in terms of policy writing and different legal opinions. So I can't purely practice in law, but it's been very helpful.
Great. This is a question to all of you. Which are the best websites to find jobs in the environmental fields? Any suggestions? Like just a quick round of suggestions. Any takers? Mathabo?
I really find the SANCOR emails. If you subscribe to SANCOR, they send out various vacancies within the marine environmental field. I find that very useful, and their website as well has a lot of career paths suggested for marine scientists.
Rebekah, did you have your hand up? Yeah, carry on.
Great, thanks. So in terms of having a look at different programs, I use the university's career board. that I found very helpful. But then also, if you're looking for international climate change jobs, there's a mailing list called the IISD mailing list that you can Google and sign up for. But then also just looking for keywords online across a range of different websites was really helpful for me.
Thank you. I'm going to go on to the next question. Fortunate, do you have anything to add in terms of websites? Otherwise, I'll move on. Fortunate, do you want to add?
Yeah, just something quickly, because we're running out of time. Met Jobs also is a site that is specifically made for people who want to branch into atmospheric science, climate modeling. So, but then it's mostly just for studying, maybe either abroad or even within the country. So you can check that as well.
Great, thank you. Very useful. Would any of you recommend joining societies as a student member, like the Botanical Society of South Africa, and getting involved in activities that they host to get to know experienced people in the field that you're interested in? Did any of you do that or think it's a good idea? Rebekah?
I think it's a great idea because a large part of working is relationship building and networking and just meeting people. Even if you make different contacts, the environmental sector within South Africa, it's quite a small world. So it'll be great to build contacts and different relationships from a university stage. I didn't specifically do the Botanical Society, but I did involve in different networking opportunities.
Any other suggestions? Should I move to the next question? Anyone?
There is an opportunity called Green Drinks, which is hosted by different organizations every month, not during COVID, but it's a great way to meet different students, but also professionals in the field.
Okay. How flexible are companies' internship programs on further developing new technical skills when one receives limited exposure during one's university studies, for example, GIS? I think that might have been touched on before, but does anyone want to add? Mathabo?
Personally, one thing for me was quite flexible. I was able to learn on the job, although I had some prior background through EGS with GIS. But London was quite flexible. I was able to learn on the job and apply my knowledge from what I've known. And obviously it depends on the type of work that you get, because it's quite a big software with a lot of things to do. So yeah, I think learning on the go. But also I do encourage you to do any actual courses outside of the university or online with GIS.
Great. Any ones to add before I go to my last question? Okay, the last question, did any of you take an academic break between your degrees to get work experience before returning to postgrad? Did any of you do that? No, they didn't. Okay, and I don't think you can see everybody's screen, so that's an easy one to answer. And then lastly, for Fortunate, do you feel like there are better avenues for officially addressing the kind of pervasive abuse or issues you experienced in a workplace versus at university?
That's a very good question, actually. Yes, there is a lot of channels that one can take when they feel like they're experiencing something of that nature within the workplace, that is. And I, for one, have found myself in a situation where I had to go and report someone who I felt like was being too personal. And what happened is we had to have a sit down with my manager and just find ways around me being able to put the issue on the table without necessarily causing conflict, because at the end of the day, we have to go back to the lab and work together. So we managed to somehow resolve the situation. He apologized, and it actually turned out that I was not the first one to lay a complaint about the very same person. so when I came in as well, then it became like a big issue where he had to be disciplined and also put on probation of some sort. So you just, as scary as it may be, we just have to learn to speak out about these things and not brush them aside like it's just another thing. We need to learn to speak, because we cannot suffer in silence. One of my lecturers liked saying that actually at UCT, stop suffering in silence, speak out. And yeah, for me it worked, and luckily it did not get to go even higher than just our primary manager. It was resolved then and there, and I was moved to another lab, and the person stayed in that lab that we were in before. So yeah, the only thing I can say that plays a big role is speaking. Just speak. Yeah.
Thank you. And that's quite a sort of an important assertive note to end on. I'm just going to conclude now, but firstly to just say thank you so much to, I feel we could actually go on for another hour. There's been such rich things that have come out of this, and I almost feel we've only just touched the surface. But I think it's been a great experience to hear your stories, Mathabo, Rebekah, and Fortunate. Thank you so much for giving of your time. It really does. It's great to have you here sharing with the graduates that are on, or the students that are online. Just to those of you who have joined us, there were 1 or 2 questions about looking for jobs in a corporate sector. And I just want to remind everybody that we at the Careers Office, Career Service are here for you. We have lots of resources. We have a Vula page where you can book consultations with a careers advisor, and we are there to help you to problem solve and brainstorm your options and help you with applications and to do as best as you can in interviews. And that's what we're there for, and we really ask that you use us. We also want to just highlight that we have more career conversations coming up. Next week, we have one especially for humanities students about why a humanities degree is still relevant in a technical world, and we have 3 very amazing humanities graduates that will be joining us. And then for those of you who are international students, we have 3 graduates who are going to talk about transitioning to work as an international student. So, and that's on Thursday, and the humanities one is on Wednesday. So ladies, thank you so much. I feel this has been such an appropriate panel for Women's Month, and thank you for all the amazing issues that you've raised, and I feel incredibly inspired. And I think it's great to just see the incredible diversity of what you've done and what you're involved in, and it makes me feel excited about the health of our planet to have you and those like you involved in the work that you are in. So thank you so much. And to those who have attended, thank you so much for attending and for your amazing questions. Apologies if we didn't answer your question. There were more questions than there were time. So thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend, and contact the Career Service if you'd like to have more help. And thanks to our panelists. Goodbye.